This is insane. So there are a couple of things that are happening as far as college campuses that are trying to keep me out now. There's one college campus that is, I'm trying to remember which college campus it is, Concordia College, I believe. And they are now trying to withdraw funding. So they funded my event there, and now they're trying to withdraw funding. So that's very exciting. That's piece of college news number one. Piece of college news number two is that a sociology professor at the University of California, Merced, told students that he wouldn't debate me, but he would enjoy ripping my arms out of the socket. Like a Wookiee, apparently. So here is a little bit of the audio that was gotten a hold of by Campus Reform.
I wouldn't debate him because being in the same room with that fool is putting this nonsense fascist ideologue on equal footing with me, using my real degree to legitimize garbage politics that are at best nonsensical. I love this gladiator thing. In my world, words mean something. Gladiator, you should pass this around. Well, I won't debate this fool. Why don't y'all set up some kind of MMA thing between me and him? And then the winner can take those $40,000 and give them to whatever charity they want. I'm completely down for this charity match. Oh, I'm completely down for that. Like, if y'all don't think I wouldn't enjoy ripping this fool's shoulder out of its socket, oh my God, y'all don't know. Y'all don't know.
So he's a real intellectual here, ripping this fool's shoulder out of his socket. He sounds like somebody who I'd have a real tough time debating, mainly because I'm not sure that he speaks in full sentences. What a genius he is. I mean, and I love when he says he wants me to use my real degree to debate him. Dude, you're a sociology professor, okay? Real degree. I went to Harvard Law School. Like, shut up. It's absurd. And this notion that I'm going to go and have a physical fight with you, we have this thing here. It's called civilization. It's where we have debates, right? It's where we talk about things. But your response to an actual civilized debate is, you want to rip somebody's arm out of their socket? What fascist nonsense. This is the second professor I know of who suggested that we have a fight. I know everybody always wants to have fights with me. Like, I know, you think I'm not physically prepossessing, and you think that you can beat me up and all this kind of nonsense. You know what? I have more money than you. I can pay people to beat you up if I wanted to. I don't need to beat you up physically. Plus, I can defeat you intellectually anytime I choose. So, of course, they revert back to their schoolyard bully nonsense that they've always been reverting to. Just what stupidity. Okay, so other things that I hate. How stupid are the American people about Star Wars? I just have to ask this because there was a poll that came out yesterday, and I have to show you the results of this poll, okay? This is a poll from Morning Consult among 2,200 U.S. adults on the popularity of various figures from Star Wars. Now, not shockingly, none of the new Star Wars figures basically make the list. I'm shocked that Jyn Erso ends up so low, right? Jyn Erso ends up at 29%. She's the one from Rogue One. Okay, how's Jyn Erso at 29%, and Jar Jar Binks is at 37%? Jar Jar frickin' Binks, right? Finn barely nudges out Jar Jar Binks. BB-8 barely nudges out Jar Jar Binks. Okay, that's amazing. It's incredible. Emperor Palpatine, by the way, only finishing at 31%? Emperor Palpatine's only at 31? Like, how is that possible? Darth Vader's only at 49%? It's this percentage that is a favorable impression of each character. But I'll tell you what the worst injustice here is, okay? The worst injustice, obviously, is that the people who are at the top of the list, okay, Leia is number one. Fine, you know, men have a good impression of Leia, and so do women. That's cool. But Luke Skywalker is number two at 72%, and Han Solo is at 68%. Who are you people? What is wrong with you? Han Solo has less of a positive percentage than Luke Skywalker? I mean, even if you include the new movie, Luke Skywalker's been on an island doing nothing, staring at rocks for like 20 years. Luke Skywalker over Han Solo, just insane. Luke Skywalker over Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke Skywalker should be down by like Jabba the Hutt. Luke Skywalker. Lando comes in at 43%. How does Lando finish beneath C-3PO or Anakin Skywalker? They actually separated out Anakin and Darth Vader. How does Anakin finish above Darth Vader? How? How is that a thing? You all go to hell. Have you even seen these movies? What's wrong with you people? Okay. Time for the big idea. So on Thursdays, we talk about a big idea that requires elucidation. And so today we'll talk about freedom of association. Freedom of association is not an actual stated constitutional right. It's pretty obvious that the Constitution means that you get to hang out with whoever you want to hang out with, because freedom of speech and freedom of assembly both mean freedom of association, right? I get to say what I want, and the government can't control that. And I also get to assemble for a petition and assemble in groups however I want. And the Supreme Court has found in cases like the NAACP versus Alabama in 1958 that the NAACP did not have to reveal to the Alabama Attorney General the names and addresses of NAACP members in the state because that would violate freedom of association. In 2000, the Supreme Court ruled that the Boy Scouts could revoke the membership of a former Eagle Scout when it found out that he was a gay rights activist because they said they have freedom of association. Freedom of association is vital because it seems to me that this should be applied to the business space as well. I get to associate with whom I want. I don't have to associate with anybody else. And I understand that there are lots of things that people do that are bad and of which you don't approve. And that historically speaking, there have been lots of people in the United States who have engaged in discriminatory practices against various members of the population. That does not mean the government gets to, at least the federal government, does not get to come in and force you to cater to audiences that you don't want or to perform businesses with people you don't want. Now, this is an extreme version of the argument that is being made in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case. In that case, they're not even basing it on freedom of association. They're saying, I have freedom of speech. You can't force me to express a message. Right? I'm an artist. You can't force me to express a message, which is a very strong argument. I would go further. I would say you actually should be able to turn away people from your business even if you just don't like their face, right? You should be able to do that. Does that make you a jerk? Absolutely. Does it make you a bad person? Yes. Should you be able to do it? Yes, because that is true for every association, right? If I have a synagogue, I shouldn't be forced to admit a Christian to my synagogue, and if I have a church, I shouldn't be forced to admit a Jew, right? The idea of freedom of association requires that we all act in society together and that we cultivate good people. But the idea that government has to force it down our throats, I think, is a big mistake. This became a big debate during the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and there were a lot of people making exactly the argument I'm making. Barry Goldwater made this argument. Barry Goldwater was a civil rights activist, by the way, and people proclaimed that he was racist because he said that people have the right to choose with whom they do business, even if you don't like the choices that they make, and he was portrayed as some sort of evil racist for all of this. There is no principled argument for freedom of association if the government gets to decide with whom you associate. End of story. So that's the history of freedom of association in a nutshell. It should still apply. Unfortunately, it's a right that's been increasingly written out over time. We should rewrite it back into the Constitution because if you don't like me, you shouldn't be forced to associate with me. What I said about income inequality is a few things. Number one, the idea that the people who are very, very rich somehow stole from the people who are very, very poor, and that's why they're very, very rich is stupid. Poor people are poor and don't have lots of money to steal. Okay, so the idea that that Bill Gates got rich by ripping off a bunch of homeless people. Homeless people were not buying Microsoft, nor was he going to them, forcing Microsoft on them for them to stick into their boxes, right? Like that's not how he got rich. The way you get rich in any free functioning economy is by participating in an enormous number of voluntary transactions that benefit both sides. You should care about the question of poverty. You shouldn't care about the question of income inequality. You should care about how do we make poor people rich, not how do we make rich people poorer so that everybody's at the same level. Because that's just you being jealous. That's just you not liking the guy's house next door because it's bigger than your house. And look at that, he has a big house, I have a smaller house. Maybe I'll just go rob his place. Right? That's not moral, and it's not decent, and it's also not true. The fact is that while the left decries income inequality, the evils of capitalism, since 1994, the world extreme poverty rate has been sliced in half by increased capitalism and by free markets. Right? I mean, the free markets that are now being bashed left and right, those free markets are the greatest innovation in the history of humanity when it comes to the economy. It's why you have nice stuff. It's why you're not sitting in your backyard right now crafting your own handmade tie from a sheep that you had to shear yourself. I mean, I thought there's a great thing. I mean, just there's a little bit of a caveat on trade. I thought my favorite story of the last few months, there was some guy who decided that he wanted to make himself a BLT and see how much it cost to make the whole thing himself, right? Like from scratch. So he actually went and he bought a cow, and then he like killed the cow, and he went out and he got a pig, and he went out and he milked and he made the cheese. He went out and he grew some wheat, and then he milled it, right? This whole thing, it cost him $1,600 to make a BLT, and it took him 6 months, right? You can go down to your local restaurant and get a BLT for $5 because of global trade and because freedom of income. And the fact is that when people talk about income inequality, what they're really saying is they don't understand how money works. They think that if there's two people in a room, one person with $5, one person with $1, the person with $5 stole from the person with $1. It doesn't ask the question, how did the person get poor? The reality is, if you don't want to be permanently poor in America, it's very, very easy. The Brookings Institute, which is a left-leaning institute, they say you only have to do 3 things. Graduate high school, don't have babies out of wedlock, get a job. That's it. Those are the 3 things. 75% of the people who do those 3 things will end up in the middle class. Not just not poor, in the middle class. Only 2% of people who do those three things end up permanently poor in the United States. So the idea that it's the rich people keeping the poor people down and they're doing it for their own pleasure, their own sick pleasure. Bill Gates says for sport, he shoots poor people from the balcony of his mansion. It's asinine in every conceivable way. And it's so funny. I did a debate on National Geographic that never aired. It never aired because it was brutal. And it was me against three, which made it almost fair for them. And it was like Van Jones, and I think Van Jones was on the other side, and some professor from NYU, and it was exactly on this topic. And I said to them, are you proposing that we actually just kill the rich people and redistribute their money? And they said no. And I said to them, why are you talking about the rich people? What did they do? And they didn't have an answer because they don't know what the rich people did. They just know they want their cash. The idea that income inequality is correlated in any way with overall poverty is really silly. There are countries with really high income inequality and very low overall poverty. That's like the United States. There are countries with zero income inequality, Sudan, and nobody has anything. Right? So the idea that the differential is the statistic that matters, it doesn't. The fact is, in the United States, 9 out of 10 Americans are living above the global middle income standard. Right? Everybody in the United States is rich by global standards. And you want to get rid of the income inequality by destroying that, good luck to you.